For 5,000 years, the Nile has been the lifeline of entire civilizations. But today, this same river stands at the center of one of the most tense standoffs in Africa. Because here's the question no one has ever fully answered: who really owns the Nile? The Nile, a river stretching more than 6,500 kilometers through deserts, mountains, and cities. It is both life and leverage. For 11 countries, it is water. For some, it is survival. But for decades, the rules of who could use it were written by only a few powerful states. This film asks a simple yet difficult question: who truly controls the Nile? Not by law alone, but by power, by history, and by geography. And what happens when a rising nation builds the dam that shifts the balance? The Nile is not one river, it is many. Two great branches, the White Nile from Lake Victoria and the Blue Nile from Ethiopia's highlands. They meet in Khartoum, then surge north to Egypt, and finally the Mediterranean. Its basin touches 11 nations: Burundi, the DRC, Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, South Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda. Each with different needs, different histories, different power. Ancient Egypt is the classic Nile story. Pharaohs timed their calendars by the floods. Herodotus wrote, "Egypt is the gift of the Nile. The river built civilizations." But hydrology complicates the picture. The Blue Nile and the Atbara, both rising in Ethiopia, carry most of the annual flood and silt. The White Nile, it supplies steadier dry season flow. In flood months, the Blue Nile alone brings the majority of the water. That means where the water starts matters. Every dam, every irrigation project, every change upstream reverberates downstream. The Nile is shared in geography, and so it is shared in politics. Two treaties shaped the Nile we know today, 1929 and 1959. Forged under Britain's colonial shadow, they gave Egypt and Sudan dominant rights to the river. The 1929 agreement handed Egypt the lion's share, even veto power over upstream projects. In effect, it meant others could not build. In 1959, Egypt and Sudan signed a new deal. Egypt 55.5 billion cubic meters, Sudan 18.5. Together, almost the entire measured flow at Aswan. No upstream state was invited to that table. Bluntly put, for decades, the Nile was treated as if it belonged to the downstream. To upstream nations, this was injustice, a colonial inheritance. By the late 20th century, the calls grew louder. Independent states demanded equity. But changing treaties is not just law, it is geopolitics. For Egypt, the Nile is existence itself. 95% of its people live in a green ribbon by the river. Drinking water, irrigation, industry all depend on those flows. In the 1960s, Nasser built the Aswan High Dam. It tamed floods, created Lake Nasser, generated power, and it cemented Egypt's downstream control. But upstream, it meant lost sediment, disrupted ecosystems, and a political order where Egypt defended its acquired rights fiercely. That's why every new dam upstream is framed in Cairo as national security. Hopefully, Ethiopia tells another story. A nation of 120 million determined to rise. For decades, power shortages left homes dark and industries stalled. So Ethiopia dreamed big, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. JERD began in 2011, hydropower on the Blue Nile. To Ethiopians, it is sovereignty, the right to use your resources to lift your people. Djured's scale is staggering, a reservoir of 74 billion cubic meters, over 5,000 megawatts of capacity, Africa's largest hydroelectric plant. By 2025, Ethiopia declared it completed, with turbines lighting millions of homes. But the scale cuts both ways. A reservoir that size can be filled quickly or slowly. Fill too fast, and downstream farmers fear thirst. Fill carefully, Ethiopia argues, and the impact is minimal. The benefits, transformative. Djured is an engineering marvel, but also a diplomatic fault line. It forces a question: can survival needs ever be negotiated? Sudan sits in between. It could gain regulated flows and cheap electricity, or it could suffer sudden releases and risk. Its stance shifts with politics at home. Other riparians: Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, the DRC, South Sudan. They have been quieter voices, but their populations are growing, and so is their demand. In 1999, the Nile Basin Initiative was born. It aimed to replace colonial-era rules with cooperation. A decade later, upstream states signed the Cooperative Framework Agreement, the Intambe Agreement. By 2024, it entered into force for those who ratified. Egypt and Sudan refused. The CFA doesn't divide the water. It sets principles: equity, reasonableness, negotiation. For some, recognition. For others, fear of losing historic rights. Mediators tried: the African Union, the US, the World Bank, the UN. Talks stalled, deals faltered. Rarely has there been a settlement binding to all. And above politics looms the storm. Population is climbing. Climate change shifts the reins. By mid-century, demand will double. Cooperation will be survival. Failure, catastrophe. But there are paths forward. Shared data, binding reservoir rules, regional power pools, insurance for infrastructure, legal frameworks that respect history and today's reality. The Nile outlasts empires. Its waters remember. Pharaohs, colonizers, diplomats, all tried to claim it. But the river belongs to those who drink it, till its soil, fish its banks. The real question is not who owns the Nile. It is, how can it be kept for all? The river no one owns. A lifeline. A mirror. Who controls it? The answer lies in whether nations choose competition or cooperation. The future is still being written on the water.